Gerard Butler. There are men who become legends because the world crowns them, and there are men who become legends because life tried to break them and failed. He was the king who roared, "This is Sparta." But the battles that shaped him didn't happen on movie sets. They happened in silence, in childhood rooms where a father never returned, on cold London streets where dreams almost died, in hospital beds, under waves, beneath flames, and in the quiet after grief. This is not the story of a movie star. This is the story of a boy who learned to rise again, and again, and again, until the world had no choice but to look up. This is Gerard Butler. What do warriors fight when the war moves inside? In Malibu, the mornings are quiet. The ocean moves in slow waves, and the light enters the house softly. There is no noise, no cheering crowd, no cameras, and no costumes. Only calm air and the sound of water touching the shore. Gerard wakes up in this quiet, and the thing he sees is a small framed note sitting near the window. It says, "Kindness is your real strength." His mother had said that many years ago. Now those words feel heavier than even the strongest armor he once wore on screen. He walks through the house slowly. The rooms are open and filled with space, but they do not feel full. There are pictures of his journey on the walls. Some show him smiling, some show him tired, and some show him standing beside people he loved. He pauses at one picture longer than the others. It is the one that reminds him of someone he lost. The silence of the room reflects something inside him, something he does not speak about often. There was a time when his life was loud. Fans shouting his name, sets filled with energy, long days of filming, flights, interviews, and non-stop movement. He used to think the noise meant he was alive. But now, the quiet teaches him something different. Life is not measured by how many people watch you. It is felt in the moments when no one is watching. When he sits alone with his thoughts, he understands that the hardest battles are not fought on battlefields or movie sets. They are fought in the mind, in the heart, in the space between memories and reality. He spends time thinking, breathing, healing. Some days are gentle, some days are heavy. Grief does not roar, it whispers, it stays. It reminds him of love, loss, and the strength to continue. To understand this silence, we have to go back to where the noise began. Some legends start with thunder. His began with a whisper. Gerard Butler was born in Paisley, a town in Scotland known for working families and quiet streets. He was the youngest of 3 children. His parents were looking for a better future, so when he was still a baby, they moved to Montreal in Canada. They hoped life there would open new doors. But dreams do not always survive reality. His parents' marriage began to break. When Gerard was only 18 months old, his father left. His mother, Margaret, was suddenly alone in a foreign place with 3 small children and no support. She had no choice except to return to Scotland. They came back to Paisley and lived in a small flat. It was not a place of comfort. The walls were thin and the rooms were cold in the winter. Money was always tight. His mother worked long hours as a secretary, doing everything she could to provide. Some days, the meals were very simple. Soup stretched to fill 3 bowls, sometimes thinner than it should be, because she needed it to last. But she always tried to make it feel enough. She never wanted her children to feel poor, even though they were. Gerard remembered her sitting late at night with a single lamp on. She would sew his school shirt so it looked neat the next morning. Her hands were tired, but she smiled at him anyway. That smile taught him more about strength than anything he would face later in life. He grew up quiet but observant. At school, he worked hard. He wanted to make his mother proud. He joined clubs, studied, and tried to be the kind of boy who could give back to the woman who gave him everything. But even when life seemed steady, one thing stayed empty. There was no father, no messages, no letters, no calls. 14 years passed without a voice, without a presence, without a single answer to the question children rarely say out loud, "Why didn't he stay?" He tried not to ask his mother too many questions. He could see the sadness in her eyes when his father's name came up, so the house stayed quiet on that topic. The rain outside seemed to understand that quiet. It tapped the windows as if it too had something heavy to say. Gerard often sat by the window, listening, thinking, wondering. The world outside moved, but inside him, time paused around that empty space. Still, the absence shaped him. It gave him a hunger to prove himself, to be seen, to matter. It also taught him empathy, the kind that grows only from understanding loss. Then, one afternoon when he was 16, everything changed. He came home from school, took off his coat, and was told to keep it on. His stepfather said gently, "Your father is here." One word would break 14 winters of waiting. Father. Sometimes the heart can't tell miracle from mirage until it fades. When Gerard walked into the living room and saw his father again, time seemed to stop. 14 years of questions, loneliness, and silence were standing in front of him in the shape of a man he barely recognized. His father opened his arms, unsure, maybe afraid. Gerard did not speak. He simply broke. All the feelings he had carried since childhood came out at once. He cried for hours, not soft tears but deep ones that shake the entire body. His mother stood nearby, silent, letting him feel what she could never fix. For a while, it felt like something long lost had finally come home. His father was warm, charming, good with stories. He talked about life in Canada, about mistakes, regrets, and dreams. Gerard listened to every word, as if each one could fill the empty space in his chest. That year, they began making memories that should have been there since childhood. Gerard spent summers in Toronto. They traveled to Jamaica once, taking photos under the bright sun. Those days felt like healing. The boy who had waited at the window finally felt seen. But reunion does not erase history. Love grows, yes, but it also remembers. There were moments when Gerard wondered why it took 14 years. There were moments when he feared it could disappear again. Still, he held on, because he wanted to believe this time was different. And for a while, it was. Then came the phone call. His father was sick. Cancer. The word felt heavy, too heavy for a heart still learning what closeness meant. Gerard visited him, sat beside him, and tried to pretend they still had time. But illness moves fast. The man he had just gotten back was slipping away. When his father passed, the silence returned. But this silence was not empty like before. It hurt in a different way. This time, it was grief, not abandonment. He had known love long enough to feel its loss. This experience shaped him deeply. It taught him that life can give and take without warning. It taught him that time is not promised. It taught him to feel fully, even when feeling hurts. It also shaped how he cared for others. He became more patient, more empathetic, more aware that every person carries pain no one sees. His mother remained his anchor through all of it. She did not say, "I told you so." She simply held space for his heart to heal again. And once again, she worked, cooked, and cared for her children the same steady way she always had. Her quiet strength became the foundation he would stand on for years. But grief does something else too. It pushes a person forward. It makes them want to find purpose, meaning something bigger than the hurt they carry. Gerard began to feel that push. When the door closed again, he chose another one that led out of Scotland. You don't find destiny. You outlast the nights that hide it. After finishing law school, Gerard thought he finally had a clear path. He had worked for years to reach that moment. Only 1 week before he was supposed to qualify as a lawyer, everything collapsed. It happened at the Edinburgh Festival. He drank too much, acted out, and the firm he worked for let him go. Losing that job meant losing the future he had been building. It felt like the floor had disappeared under his feet. With no job and no plan, he left Scotland and moved to London. He hoped he could start again, but the city did not welcome him easily. He stayed on friends' couches when he could. Some nights he had nowhere to go, so he walked through the streets until morning just to stay warm. The air was cold and sharp. His breath came out in small clouds under the streetlights. The world around him kept moving, but he felt stuck, invisible. To survive, he took whatever work he could find. He worked as a telemarketer, calling strangers and trying to sell things they didn't really want. The phone beeped and rang endlessly. Most people hung up. Some spoke to him rudely, but he kept trying, because he needed every small paycheck. Some days he sold toys in the rain. He stood outside shops holding plastic swords and action figures, smiling for children while parents barely looked at him. The rain soaked his clothes, but he kept going. He remembered the hunger from his childhood and knew he could not let it return. He had to push on. During this time, he struggled with alcohol. Drinking made the pain feel softer, but it also took away clarity, energy, and control. One night, he looked at his reflection in a window. His face looked tired, older, lost. He whispered to himself, "Who are you?" It was a quiet, honest moment. He realized if he didn't stop drinking, he might never escape the cycle he was in. So, he quit. Not for fame or appearance. He quit because survival required it. Life did not immediately improve, but something inside him did. He became more aware, more determined. He kept working, kept searching, kept holding on to the belief that something was waiting for him, even if he could not see it yet. Even in the hardest moments, there were small signs that he was not finished. He remembered the strength of his mother. He remembered the short years with his father. He remembered how it felt to lose and get up again. Those memories became fuel. London was difficult, but it was also where something began to shift. He started reconnecting with people who knew him before life had become so heavy. One of those people was someone he had met in the Scottish Youth Theatre years earlier. She was working as a casting assistant now. Then fate wore a familiar face and handed him a script. The line between surviving and becoming is only one word: read. When Gerard reconnected with the woman he had known from the Scottish Youth Theatre, life shifted softly, not with loud celebration. She was now working as a casting assistant in London. She saw he was struggling, but she did not make him feel ashamed. She simply offered him a job helping her in the casting office. It wasn't acting. It was organizing papers, answering calls, making schedules, and sitting quietly, while others tried to win the roles he dreamed of. But it was steady work, and for the first time in a long time, he felt close to something that still mattered to him. Every day, he watched actors perform. Some were nervous, some were confident, and some were trying to hide fear behind a smile. He understood them. He felt the same fear, even though he wasn't the one reading. When he handed out scripts, he wondered what it would feel like to speak the words instead of passing them on. Something inside him began to wake up again, a small spark from years ago. One day, she invited him to come along to an audition for a play directed by Steven Berkoff. The play was Coriolanus. Gerard was not supposed to read. He was just there to help. But when he watched others audition, something inside him would not stay quiet. He felt the urge rising, stronger and stronger. Finally, he gathered his courage and asked Berkoff directly if he could read for a role. He almost expected to be laughed at or dismissed. Instead, Berkoff nodded. When Gerard opened the script, his hands shook. His voice carried not just the words, but the years of hunger, loneliness, and quiet fight inside him. He did not perform to impress. He performed because he needed to. When he finished, the room did not move for a moment. Berkoff saw something real and cast him on the spot. That moment changed everything. When Gerard stepped on stage for the first rehearsal, The lights were bright and warm. The stage felt like a place where he finally existed, not as someone trying to survive life, but as someone living it. The audience was close enough to see every emotion on his face. When the first applause came, it filled the emptiness he had carried for so long. Acting gave him something simple but powerful, a sense of self. He understood, maybe for the first time, who he was meant to be. Stage heat would turn to camera glare far harsher, far colder. Sometimes the industry doesn't say no, it just pretends you're not there. After his first experience on stage, Gerard felt sure that acting was where he belonged, but the path forward was not smooth. He took small parts whenever he could. Some roles were in short films or small TV spots. He was grateful for them, but they passed quietly. Few people even noticed he was there. One of his earliest film appearances was in Tomorrow Never Dies, a James Bond movie. But his role was so quick that if you blinked, you missed him completely. It wasn't the kind of moment that announces a star. It was the kind that just lets you say, "I was there." It gave him a small credit, and nothing more. Still, he kept trying. He traveled, auditioned, waited, and worked. There were long days in hotel rooms that looked the same no matter the city. There were nights when he wondered if the dream was slipping away before it even began. Acting is difficult in a quiet way. People think the struggle is performing, but the real struggle is being unseen. His first big chance seemed to arrive with Dracula 2000 Inches the year 2000. He played the lead role, and the movie had a strong studio backing and marketing push. It was supposed to be a major breakout. It had action, mystery, music, and style. But when the movie released, it did not perform the way the studio hoped. Many critics were unkind. The box office numbers were lower than expected. The whispers around him were soft but sharp. Maybe he's not ready. Maybe he's just not the one. Those words could have broken him, but they didn't. He had already lived through harder things. He knew what it felt like to lose a father, to watch a mother sacrifice, to walk cold streets with nothing. A disappointing movie could not undo him, so he went back to work. He accepted supporting roles, small roles, voice roles, anything that allowed him to keep learning and improving. He worked on understanding his craft, not chasing fame. He watched how directors guided scenes, how actors found truth in their characters, and how emotion could be expressed with even a quiet look. He did not stop. He did not give up. He kept building, slowly and steadily. This period taught him resilience. It taught him patience. It taught him that success is not an explosion. It is a slow turning of doors, until one finally opens. Then came a role that required not muscle, but a bleeding voice. Courage isn't loud. It's a held note that might break. When Gerard was offered the role of the Phantom in The Phantom of the Opera, it was not the kind of role people expected him to take. Most people saw him as someone who could be strong, intense, physical, but this role needed something different. It needed softness, pain, longing, and a voice strong enough to carry emotion through every note. Gerard was not a trained singer. He had never taken formal singing lessons. When he heard that the director believed he could do it, his first feeling was fear. He began training right away, hours in front of a vocal coach, learning how to breathe from the diaphragm, how to hold a note, how to let emotion come through the voice and not just the face. His throat hurt often. Some days it felt raw. There were moments when he wondered if his voice would simply give out. Each session came with the pressure of knowing that millions of people already loved the Phantom story. If he failed, it would not be a small failure. It would be visible, loud, and remembered. But there was something deeper in this role that connected with him. The Phantom was a character who had known loneliness, longing, and the feeling of being unseen. Gerard understood those feelings in a personal way. The pain he carried from childhood, the loss of his father, the years of trying to be seen in London, those emotions lived inside him already. The role did not just require acting, it required opening those memories. Recording sessions were intense. In the studio, he stood in front of the microphone with headphones on, hearing the music build behind him. A metronome clicked slowly. His breath was loud. He could hear it in his ears. Every take mattered. Some notes cracked, some lines shook, but he kept going. During filming, the mask and makeup took hours each day. Yet, the hardest part was not the mask on his face. It was taking off the emotional mask he had worn for years. The Phantom loved deeply and painfully. Gerard had to let his own pain rise to the surface to show that love honestly. When the movie premiered in 2004, the reaction surprised many people. The film earned strong attention around the world, and audiences felt moved by his performance. More than box office numbers or reviews, something else happened. Gerard felt, for the first time, that he had proven something to himself. Not that he could act, not that he could sing, but that he could step into fear, stay there, and not break. This role didn't just raise his career, it changed how he understood himself. It taught him that strength is not always in shouting or fighting. Sometimes strength is in letting others see your wounds. Next, he would roar, and the world would never unhear it. To look immortal on screen, you first agree to be mortal off it. After Phantom of the Opera, Gerard was offered a role that would change not only his career, but also how the world saw him. It was the role of King Leonidas in the film 300. This was not a simple role. It demanded strength, discipline, and a level of physical and mental intensity that most people never experience. The story of the Spartan warriors was about courage, loyalty, and the will to stand firm even when the world was against you. Gerard felt connected to that idea. He had lived those feelings in his own life. The training began months before filming. The workouts were known as the 300 workout, and they were brutal. They included 25 pull-ups, 50 deadlifts, 50 push-ups, 50 box jumps, 50 floor wipers, and 50 clean and press lifts, all in one session with very little rest. Each day pushed the body and mind past their limits. The goal was not just to build muscle. It was to build the mindset of a warrior, someone who does not quit, no matter how tired he becomes. Sometimes, the training room floor was covered in chalk and sweat. Sometimes, the men training beside him could not continue. It was common for someone to collapse or need medical help. Gerard did not walk away. He kept going, even when his body felt broken. During the process, he tore a tendon in his shoulder. He developed nerve damage that caused his leg to drag when he walked. He ignored the pain and continued training. He took painkillers when necessary, but he always came back the next day. The injuries stayed with him long after the movie was finished. Even today, he can still feel the effects of that training. But in that moment, he believed the pain was necessary. He wanted to honor the role and the story. When filming began, he took on the responsibility of being the leader on set as well. The other actors looked to him for strength. He tried to be calm, focused, and confident. The famous line, "This is Sparta," was not just a shout, it was a declaration of courage. When he performed it, he put every part of himself into that moment. The line became iconic. It turned him into a symbol around the world. But with fame came pressure. People expected him to stay that powerful, fearless king all the time. They expected him to always be strong, always confident, always loud. The character became a shadow that followed him everywhere. At interviews, on red carpets, in public, people asked him to repeat the line. They didn't always see the real man behind the roar. They saw the hero, not the human who had gone through pain, doubt, and fear to create that hero. The success of 300 was huge. It earned hundreds of millions of dollars worldwide. It made Gerard a global name, but it also left him exhausted, injured, and emotionally drained. The image of the strong king was powerful. But it did not show the quiet moments of recovery behind closed doors. It did not show the nights when he lay awake, feeling pain in his shoulder and leg. He had become a king in the eyes of the world. But a king who only shouts becomes a statue. He needed a heartbeat. He learned that the strongest muscle in an action star is mercy. After 300, people expected Gerard to stay in the world of warriors and battles. Hollywood often tries to put actors inside one box. If someone becomes known for strength, they are asked to play strength again and again. But Gerard did not want to be only the king with the roar. He wanted to show that he could feel, love, break, and heal on screen the same way real people do. So, instead of choosing another action movie right away, he chose P.S. I Love You. It was a love story about grief, healing, and memory. It required softness, humor, and emotional openness. Some industry people questioned the choice. They wondered if audiences would accept him without the muscles and the battle scenes. But Gerard trusted the story. He trusted the character, and the film connected with people all over the world. Many fans said the movie helped them through their own losses. From there, he continued to move between genres. He acted in romantic comedies like The Ugly Truth, showing timing, humor, and warmth. He acted in thrillers like Law-Abiding Citizen, where emotion came through quiet intensity instead of shouting. Then came the Has Fallen series, where he returned to action again, but with more maturity and emotional depth. The franchise became very successful, and people loved his character not just because he could fight, but because he cared deeply about others. But switching between genres came with challenges. Every time he changed roles, he had to rebuild trust with audiences and filmmakers. One week he could be filming a romantic scene, and the next week he could be filming a chase across a burning street. His schedule was filled with travel. He filmed in different countries, different climates, on different continents. He spent more time in airports and hotels than at home. The constant movement took a toll on his mind and body. Some nights, he would wake up and not immediately remember which city he was in. The hotel rooms began to look the same. The days blended together. He was grateful for the work, but the pace was heavy. Success does not always feel like winning. Sometimes it feels like running without stopping, afraid that if you slow down, everything might fall apart. He also carried the pressure of proving himself each time. If an action movie succeeded, people said it was expected. If a quiet movie succeeded, people said it was luck. And if a movie failed, the blame often felt personal. But he continued anyway. He believed that an actor should not be limited to one shape, one tone, or one type of story. This period taught him balance between strength and gentleness. It taught him how to show heart on screen, not just power. He learned that vulnerability can be just as compelling as intensity. Then the world hit back, not in reviews, but in physics. The body breaks loudly. The healing answers in a whisper. During the years when Gerard was moving from film to film, it seemed from the outside that everything was strong, steady, and successful. But behind the scenes, his work came with real physical danger. Acting may look glamorous, but many roles require real stunts, real risks, and real pressure to deliver the perfect shot. The first major scare happened on the set of Lara Croft, The Cradle of Life. Gerard was filming a scene upside down, holding a prop gun. The angle was awkward, and the gun slipped. A piece of the prop fired and passed near Angelina Jolie's face. It missed her by about an inch. The room went silent. Everyone realized how easily everything could have gone wrong. Gerard laughed it off in the moment, trying to ease the tension, but inside he was shaken. It was the first time he understood how quickly a film scene could become a real-life tragedy. Years later, while filming Butterfly on a Wheel, he experienced something worse. A Range Rover was supposed to stop during a scene on a rooftop, but the timing was off. The vehicle hit him and pinned him against a low wall. Pain shot through his body. The crew reacted quickly. but the damage was already done. His hip, his shoulder, and the nerves in his leg suffered. His leg began to drag when he walked. He was already dealing with injuries from 300, and this collision added more pain. Still, he continued working. He pushed himself because he believed stopping would mean losing everything he had fought for. But the ocean would test him in a deeper way. In Chasing Mavericks, Gerard needed to film surfing scenes with real waves. The surf location in Northern California was known for strong, dangerous water. During one of the shoots, a wave much larger than expected crashed into him and pulled him under. The world went dark. He couldn't tell which way was up. He could feel the pressure in his chest as his lungs tried to find air. For a moment, he truly believed that this was where his life would end. A rescue team finally reached him and pulled him out. He woke up in a hospital bed, exhausted and weak. After the accident, he was prescribed strong painkillers to handle the physical damage. At first, the medication helped him recover, but slowly, the line between healing and dependency began to blur. Painkillers numbed not only pain, but also emotion. They made everything feel far away. The exhaustion, the pressure, the travel, the expectations, those feelings became easy to escape, and that was dangerous. Gerard realized he was starting to rely on the pills in a way that could destroy him. He made the difficult decision to check into the Betty Ford Center. Rehab was not glamorous. It was quiet, raw, and honest. He spent weeks there, facing not only the addiction risk, but also the emotional weight he had been carrying for years. He learned that real strength is not pushing through everything alone. Sometimes real strength is stopping, admitting pain, asking for help. When he left rehab, he was different. He was calmer, more thoughtful, more aware of his limits and needs. He understood his body was not indestructible. His mind wasn't either. Healing was not something that happened overnight. It was something he had to choose again and again. But life was not done testing him. Pain and recovery had come through the body. The next loss would come through the place he called home. Fire doesn't always come from a stunt. Sometimes it comes for your home. What the fire left was everything it couldn't burn. In November 2018, the Woolsey fire swept through Malibu with almost no warning. It moved fast, driven by strong winds and dry air. Gerard had a home there, a place he had built through years of work. It was where he rested between films, where he tried to find peace. One night, he saw smoke rising in the distance. By the time he reached the hill overlooking his property, flames had already taken over the area. His home was burning. There was nothing he could do but watch. When the fire finally passed, he returned to see what was left. The house was gone. The walls were collapsed. The rooms were ash, and the memories he had kept there were turned to black dust. His 300 cape, which Zack Snyder had personally given him, was destroyed. The box of letters from his mother was burned away. Photos from early years were gone. Furniture, clothes, personal awards, nothing was spared. Losing a house is not just losing a building. It is losing the place where pieces of your life were stored. When those pieces disappear, the heart feels the emptiness. Gerard took a photo of the ruins. He stood in front of what used to be his living room. The sky was gray with smoke. Ash covered the ground. He posted the photo with a short caption, "Welcome to my home in Malibu." 7 words. No complaint, no anger, no dramatic explanation. Just truth. But instead of leaving the area, he stayed. He joined the local relief efforts. He helped serve food at community centers. He listened to stories from neighbors who had lost homes, pets, and memories just like he had. He stood beside firefighters who had worked for days without proper rest. He realized quickly that even though he had lost things, others had lost far more. The experience changed what he valued. He began to understand in a deeper way that things are just things. Homes can be rebuilt. Clothes can be replaced. Objects can be bought again, but people cannot be replaced. The fire did not just take belongings, it gave perspective. It reminded him of the importance of connection, compassion, and being present when others are hurting. When the time came to think about where to stay, Gerard did not rush to rebuild. He bought a small RV to live in temporarily. It wasn't much, but it gave him a place to sleep, think, and breathe. It was simple. Some might have called it starting over. He called it learning to be content. But loss has a strange way of repeating itself. In 2020, that RV, the small home he had used to rebuild his life, was stolen. The little space that held his attempts at peace was taken away. When asked how he felt, he did not show anger. He simply said, "I've lost bigger things. Things can be replaced. People matter." The fire taught him how to let go. But not all losses leave smoke. Some leave a chair that stays empty. Fame is the loudest room to try to hear, "I love you." Gerard's love life was never loud in the way tabloids like to pretend. The real story was softer, quieter, and often painful in ways most people never saw. He was not someone who avoided love. He simply lived a life that made love difficult to hold. One of his earliest relationships began during the years when he was still struggling in London. She was the woman who helped him find his way back into acting. They were close, comfortable, and supportive of each other. They shared simple evenings, cheap meals, and long talks about what they hoped their lives might become. She believed in him before almost anyone else did. But as his career slowly began to rise, their paths moved in different directions. It wasn't anger or betrayal, it was timing. Sometimes life pulls two people forward, but not toward the same place. He never spoke badly of her. He simply carried gratitude. Then, years later, came Jennifer Aniston. They met on the set of The Bounty Hunter. Their chemistry was natural and unforced, both on and off camera. They laughed easily together. They understood each other in a quiet way. Both had lived through public heartbreaks. Both knew what it felt like to be talked about more than understood. For a short time, being together gave them peace. But Hollywood is not kind to peace. Every look, every meal, every moment was photographed, discussed, and turned into a story they did not control. What might have been something gentle was pulled apart by noise. They cared for each other, but neither could find enough stillness to protect it, so they let it go without bitterness. Then came the relationship that stayed the longest. Morgan Brown. She was not from Hollywood. She did not want attention or spotlight. She worked as an interior designer and lived with calm energy. With her, Gerard found something rare quiet. They cooked at home, talked on balconies, took simple walks. She did not try to change him. She just wanted him present. And that was the part he struggled with. Work pulled him across countries, across time zones, across months. He tried to balance it, but the distance crept in slowly, like fog. There is a moment people close to him still talk about. One evening, they were standing on the balcony of his home. The city lights were glowing below. The air was warm and still. She looked at him and said softly, "I just want you here." She didn't mean physically. She meant in the heart, in the mind, in life. He understood. He just didn't know how to give her that completely, while his work demanded so much of him. They separated, then reunited, then separated again. Not because there was no love, but because love sometimes is not enough to overcome timing. Some people are right for us, but the life we have cannot hold them. Gerard never spoke harshly of her. Even years later, her name softened his voice. Some loves don't end. They simply settle in a quiet place inside the heart. And then, he lost the voice he never stopped chasing his mother's. A son grows older. A boy never stops reaching for her hand. Gerard's mother, Margaret, had been the quiet center of his life since the beginning. She was the one who held their family together after his father left. She was the one who worked long days and late nights. She was the one who taught him how to stay kind, even when life was not. Her strength was never loud. It lived in the way she kept going. In 2025, she passed away. There were no headlines, no big announcements, no public speeches. Just a phone call, a plane ride, and a return to the place where his life first began. He flew back to Paisley, back to the same gray skies and narrow streets he had once looked at through childhood windows. But now he returned not as the young boy waiting for answers. He returned as a man, carrying grief in his chest. The church was small and quiet. The wooden pews creaked softly when people sat down. The air smelled of candle wax and old stone. He sat near the front, but not in the center. He kept his head slightly down, as if he was talking to her inside himself. When the hymns played, he did not sing. He listened. The music felt like memory. He remembered her sewing his school shirt under a single lamp. He remembered her calling him "my wee boy," no matter how old he became. He remembered her telling him, "Kindness is your real strength," and how those words guided him even when he stood on screens as kings and warriors. He remembered her laughter, her patience, her ability to give even when she had little. When the service ended, he walked outside into the cool air. The sky was cloudy, and the town was quiet. It felt as if time had paused just long enough for him to say goodbye. Later, when his film How to Train Your Dragon released, the live-action version included a small line at the end of the credits. It read, "Dedicated to Gerard Butler, whose strength lives on in her son." When Gerard saw that on screen for the first time, he cried. Not loudly, just quietly, the way grief moves when it has already settled deep inside. That dedication was not just for the audience. It was a message to her. Grief changes a person. It does not simply hurt. It rearranges the inside of life. After her passing, Gerard became even more driven to help others. Not to impress anyone, not for charity events or news articles, but because doing good felt like speaking to her. Feeding children in Liberia, supporting hospice patients in Scotland, rebuilding homes after disasters, each act felt like placing a small flower on her memory. He once said that when he helped someone, he imagined her smiling. That was how he kept her close. He did not talk much about loss publicly. He did not try to turn it into a story. He simply lived differently. He slowed down. He listened more. He allowed himself to feel sadness without fear. He understood, in a clearer way, that life is short and love is rare, and people are not here forever. Some days, the sadness arrives quietly. It sits beside him like an old companion. He does not push it away. He lets it stay for a moment, then lets it soften. Because grief, when it is tied to love, does not disappear. It becomes part of who you are. So, what do you do after the world goes quiet? You decide who you'll be. He stopped chasing applause and started following echoes. After everything he had lived through, the rise, the injuries, the heartbreaks, the fire, and the loss of his mother, Gerard began to rebuild his life in a slower, more thoughtful way. He no longer needed to prove anything. He no longer needed to be the loudest or the strongest. He wanted peace, purpose, and a life that felt honest. His mornings changed first. Instead of rushing to meetings or calls, he woke up early and made tea. He stepped outside to feel the morning air. Sometimes he took a walk in the hills near his home. The ground felt solid under his feet. The simple rhythm of walking helped him notice his thoughts instead of running from them. He learned to breathe deeply and let silence be a friend, not something to escape. Acting was still part of his life, but he became more selective. He did not take roles just to stay visible or to stay in the spotlight. He chose roles that had meaning, stories that felt human. When he returned to the character of Stoic in the live-action How to Train Your Dragon, it felt right. Stoic was a leader, a father, someone who loved deeply and sometimes hurt, because of that love. Bringing that role back to life reminded Gerard of connection and warmth. The film did well, but what mattered more was how it made him feel while making it. Outside of acting, he put more energy into helping others. He traveled to Liberia and Haiti, not for publicity, but to work in communities where children needed food and families needed support. He worked alongside volunteers in field kitchens, stirring pots, serving meals, and laughing with kids who had faced challenges far bigger than his. He did not stand in front, he stood beside. Helping became a quiet conversation with his mother. Every kind act felt like saying, "I heard you, I remember." He also took time to mentor younger actors. He taught them not just how to perform, but how to stay grounded when success comes and when it goes. He spoke about patience, respect, and staying in touch with real life. Many listened to him not because he was famous, but because he spoke honestly. At home, his life became simple. He cooked, he read, he kept in touch with family in Scotland. He visited friends without the need to be the center of attention. He learned to say no when he needed rest. He stopped searching for happiness in faraway places and found small joy in everyday moments. People sometimes asked him what success meant now. His answer changed from what it might have been years ago. He did not talk about awards or box office numbers. He said, success was being able to wake up in the morning and feel proud of the person he was becoming. Success meant being gentle, present, and thankful. He had been the warrior. He had been the king. He had been the survivor. Now he was simply a man learning to live with meaning. If strength isn't the roar or the crown, what is it for you?